Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Azure podcast with your host Sam Foote.
And Armstrong.
If you're new here, we're a pair of Azure and Microsoft 365 focused IT security professionals.
It's episode 41 of season 5. Sam and I had a recent discussion around patch management for servers, an everyday task for system admins that can be simplistic and complicated at the same time. Here are a few things we covered. Why is patch management important, and what are some of the issues you can run into? What tooling can help with patch management for servers? What is Azure Update Manager? And what is Hotpatch for Windows servers?
We've noticed that a large number of you aren't subscribed. If you do enjoy our podcast, please do consider subscribing. It would mean a lot to us for you to show your support to the show.
It's a really great episode, so let's dive in.
Hey Alan, how are you doing this week?
Hey Sam, not doing too bad. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. We're in December now. I assume you're in full festive spirit.
Something like that, maybe. Don't think I've had the time, to be fair.
Is the tree up? Are the decorations out? Is it like a grotto in your front room? Where are you on the Christmas theming?
I suppose the tree is up. The wreath is on the door, but that's not my doing. If it was me, it doesn't get put on till the 24th because I forget. Normally, but I think this time my parents have come around and purposely made sure it gets up there, so it actually gets some usage. Yeah, light decorations, I think it's probably fair to say, because we're planning to move in the new year, so I think we've been more relaxed around it.
I was
How about
getting
you?
links. I was getting links for the most ridiculous sort of Christmas decorations. We have resisted buying, like, I saw like there was this 5.5 foot tall like nutcracker basically. It was like a life size, and it was just too expensive. I was like, no, that's ridiculous. It would look great in the hall, but like it was just ridiculous. So no, we haven't splashed out at all this year. We have been quite reserved, which is good. Anything else from the Microsoft sphere that's new this week, Alan?
Not that I'm aware of. There's been a few sort of product previews sort of starting out again, as you know, as they continue to develop stuff in the the background from the CCP program, but no, I don't think there has been too much coming out from what I can remember anyway. Have you seen anything?
No, not particularly. I just assumed we'd have a bit of slumber after the whole Ignite, because it is so close to Christmas. Well, the holiday season. That I just assumed we wouldn't get much, to be totally honest with you. Not that the machine stopped spinning or churning, but I think they've done quite a few. Like it was our last episode, wasn't it? The Ignite and Update episode. So
yeah,
there's a fair few things in that book of news, wasn't there? So, and just generally in the month as well. So no, not that much excitement on the Microsoft front for me. What are we talking about this week?
So we're going to talk a little bit about patch management, but mainly around Azure Update Manager and Hotpatch. It's something that it's quite somewhat interesting, I think, for people who have to sort of manage patching of servers and things like that. As we know, sometimes it's a full-time sort of job.
Yeah, I kind of feel like servers in some respects are, I don't know, quite a few years behind maybe the, I don't know, consolidated, integrated approach that endpoints now have, if that makes sense. I don't know whether it's just the complexity of like server environments, if that makes sense, but it can be tricky, can't it? With different, especially across different operating systems and different platforms that you're hosting these machines on.
Yeah, Yeah, definitely. It's different to end users for sure.
Yeah, 100%. Right, yeah. So should we get started?
Yeah.
Okay, could you just sort of start us off then with sort of patch management 101? What is it and why is it important?
Yeah, so I suppose kind of as it sounds, it's patch management is the management of patches. It's a terrible way of sort of describing it, using the words in a different order. Um, but in effect, within an organization, be it user endpoints, software, things like that, servers. There's always these Windows updates. There's always patches to go out. Um, you know, improvements to the operating system or the software, or probably the more critical one is security updates when vulnerabilities are found, or there's potentially bug fixing within some of the applications. So for an organization, this is very critical. And I kind of it's probably split into sort of 2 or 3 areas. I think there's probably sort of software patching, so third-party software patching, and then you've probably got operating systems patching, which then kind of splits into 2 around, I would say, user endpoints, and then servers as sort of separation. So it's important to sort of do this, to do patching and keep up to date. One is to make sure that you're in, you get like I said, you get all the latest features or updates, updates to the software. But like I said, the main one is to make sure that any vulnerabilities are then closed, and if that software is protected until maybe the next vulnerability is found within that version of it. But from a day-to-day sort of business as usual kind of thing, it is a sort of a full-time job for a security team, sec admin, for the servers or for the user endpoints, to sort of manage to make sure everything is being patched and it's not breaking any of the services that might be on it. Now it's fairly difficult to, without any tooling to help you sort of visualize what's patched, what's not patched, the order that you're going to do it in, because these are all the things you kind of got to think about when doing patches, is the scheduling, because you might not want to patch. Say you've got a cluster of web services, you may not want to patch all of them at the same time in case that patch breaks your cluster of front ends. You might only patch one first to make sure that the application still works. At least then you can roll back, or at least rebuild that one machine and not worry about the others, kind of thing. So there's all these things you've got to think about when doing when patching, and I think that's kind of the difference between user endpoints and servers, is that potentially if you patch one machine for a user endpoint, you only affect one user. That user might not be able to work for that day because it's crashed, etc. You're only impacting an individual user. Where for servers, if you patch, like I said, a cluster of web servers, that could take down that service that you've got as your product. But then that could be servicing thousands and millions of users, across the world, kind of thing, or internally, and then that service is gone. So the criticality of patching becomes it's very you have to be very cautious about how you sort of do that patch management side of things.
Yeah, so I suppose there's 2 sides of it, isn't there? There's patching for sort of vulnerabilities and management of that, but also to get new features as well. So I suppose there's multiple reasons to have a mature patch management process, right? I suppose, and I think to your earlier point that there's just too much software now to do that manually. the scale is just too enormous.
Yeah, and it's not like it's every 3 months, every 6 months you have to do it. For Windows updates for Windows servers, that's every 4 weeks, once a month that you've got to sort of run through that process. So
Yeah,
you've
and
got
I
a
suppose
large estate.
yeah, and I suppose the criticality of these endpoints, because they're servers, they it's not like a user endpoint where if you ask them to reboot at the end of their working day to install like a Windows update, that's not really the end of the world, is it? But servers are typically on 24/7, aren't they? Serving workloads.
Yeah, and serving multiple users as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, could you just sort of talk us through the types of tooling that's out there to help manage patching on servers?
Yeah, so there are there's probably quite a few server management tooling out there that are third party to sort of Microsoft tooling. I don't know what some of those are called. I think you might have potentially Patch My PC might be able to do servers. Seen that more on the user endpoints. As an example, you might have something like, I think, a Ninja One, sort of a device management, server management kind of tooling. But from a Microsoft perspective, probably the most common one that we see is Config Manager. In its various sort of naming, it used to be called SCCM, System Center Configuration Manager, and I think it was called Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager, and I don't actually know what it's called, which terminology it's using now, but we'll just call it Config Manager in effect. So that's got a mechanism in there for doing patch management. And then I guess you've also got the mechanism of sort of probably Windows Update Server, WSUS server, which actually is being decommissioned. I think, is it next year or the year after? I think that service. Which everyone, that's been the sort of primary way of doing patch management and managing which patches go to which servers, kind of thing. So that's probably been the more traditional, I say traditional, but the more traditional on-premise sort of way that you would manage updates on there, outside of trying your best to sort of manage it yourself. It depends how big your estate is, really. Depends on what sort of tooling you might do. But another one is that's kind of come out in the last couple of years. It's called Azure Update Manager. That's another one that potentially can be used for Azure and on-premise as well.
Yeah, so do you want to take us through Azure Update Manager and sort of the benefits that it brings?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so it went generally available in September 2023. So it is probably GA. Well, it's just over a year old from a GA perspective. So as it sounds, it's an Azure service that's in the portal. The idea of it is to help manage the updates for all machines, and to be fair, this includes Windows and Linux for patching. But the good thing about this is that it's not just for Azure; it's also for on-premise and other cloud platforms. So it's using Azure Arc to cover those other areas, so other clouds, things like that. The idea is it's a single pane of glass sort of concept for your patch management. You can do remote checks, which in effect assessments against your endpoints to be able to see whether they've got the latest patching on them. I think you do that. It does it automatically every 24 hours, but you can just do it instantly. You can, in effect, build your dashboarding to show sort of the information you need to see. It's it's kind of RBAC based. So depending on whether you have access to the servers in Azure, whether they're Arc or Azure based, shows you that information. So it's quite easy to highlight who the responsibility side of things. There's very little from an onboarding perspective because in Azure it's pretty much sort of enabled anyway in some form. And Arc, as long as you've got Azure Arc deployed, then it can just be enabled on that environment. There was a previous version where you could do patch management in Azure using automation accounts. That's not needed anymore. That sort of service has been deprecated as far as I'm aware. So now this is the new service around it. I've talked about roles and things like that. The idea as well is that if you've got extended support for some operating systems, this is done through this update manager as well. And I think it's just generally that it's a single pane of glass across the whole lot. I think it's quite interesting. It also does Linux as well. And in effect, you can build your schedules, your sort of patch groups, things like that, to help you with that sort of patch management side of things.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, to consolidate it and make it as easy as possible. It feels like workstation endpoint management. Sorry, not endpoint management, but patch management now, right? If we're just having one singular place, and Azure Arc coming into as a technology that gives you let's call it, well, it's an arc, not a bridge, but a bridge is an arc, I suppose, to other clouds and even on-prem, at least you can modernize that process and get it cloud connected and cloud managed, maybe without ripping out or migrating workloads into Azure if you don't want to.
Yeah, I mean, in effect, what it's using is using sort of Windows updates for business from the actual where it gets the updates from. It's just this is actually managing when they get them and that side of things. It's kind of, I suppose, kind of manipulating the local, sort of the local group policy, if you could say that, when it patches things like that.
Yeah, exactly.
On the fly kind of thing. So, yeah, and it's one of those things that you can have that maintenance, that schedule, but if you need to patch it, if there's an opportunity to patch, outside that schedule, I think you're able to then push it out to then do it there and then kind of thing if you get that opportunity.
Nice. So, I suppose the $1 million question, or hopefully not $1 million question, is what's the licensing like and the costing?
So, if it's in Azure, if your machine is in Azure, then it's free, which I think is quite cool. Well, it's very cool because it's free.
Is it free though, or is it included in the cost?
Well, I suppose you could say it's included in your virtual machine costs. I suppose
Yeah.
is the management
okay.
plane underneath it, etc., etc. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. It's included in your Azure costs in general. You don't have to pay extra on top.
Yep.
For Azure Arc enabled servers, it is $5 per server per month. So there is a cost there.
Okay.
But Azure Update Manager is included with Azure benefits for Azure Stack HCI, extended security updates enabled by Azure Arc. So if you are doing extended security updates for an older operating system, you get it included, and Microsoft Defender for Server Plan 2. So I think if from Plan 1 to Plan 2 on Defender for Server, I think it's $5 for Plan 1 and $15 for Plan 2. So it means that it's only technically costing you $5 more in cost that you'd need for an Arc machine to get all the other benefits of Defender for Server Plan 2 side of things.
Yeah, well, that's quite a strong value add, isn't it? If the standalone is $5, and the uplift is say $10, or even if you just didn't. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and as we are seeing more and more people consolidate down into that singular Microsoft like security ecosystem, it could well be that they've already got Plan 2 in a lot of
Yeah,
places. So for
exactly.
those types of customers, that is just an extra included benefit, on
Yeah,
top. Yeah, definitely.
yeah. The Azure Arc servers are charged by the day, so not hourly, but it's like 16.2 cents per server per day, basically, which then
Right.
apparently
Okay. Yeah.
amalgamates it to $5 per server per month.
Yeah,
So
but
if
this.
your server's turned off, then you don't pay for it.
Okay. Right. Um. Yeah, because virtual machines, they're not like containers, are they? Where they can potentially have really short life cycles. I know they probably could, because you can still do sort of batch workloads, can't you, with VM scale sets and things like that. But if you
Yeah,
would, if your VMs had such a low sort of time to live, then you might not even need an update solution like this potentially,
true.
right?
True.
But
I suppose if you had sort of jump boxes, maybe you don't turn on all the time on premise.
yeah, I'm just thinking it, it's more of a rare case that you're using a virtual machine for 20 minutes, isn't it?
Yeah,
And
or
yeah,
only for a couple of days, even really.
yeah. I don't know the stats. That's just my gut. Is that typically virtual machines are left on or available during business hours at a you know at a minimum.
Yeah,
You know.
I suppose if you had a RDS solution in the in your local data center, on premise data center, and maybe they were only on 9 to 5, but then you're paying daily, so
Yeah.
maybe they're not turned on at weekends. So you can get a couple of days free. So
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Really good. Um.
uh,
Anything else on licensing and cost?
no, there's nothing around that. The only thing I was going to say is that it can also interact with hot patching.
Ah. Yes. Yeah. Sorry. Did I skip over that? Because we did.
No,
We were meant to cover that.
no, it's the next question. It's the next thing on the list,
Oh,
I
okay,
think.
cool. Yeah. So, yeah, can you expand out on that on Hotpatch for Windows Server?
Yeah, so this is quite interesting in that Hotpatch has been out for I don't know, actually, maybe it's been like a year, maybe a year and a half. So hot patching, in effect, is a different way of installing security updates into Windows Server. So as it kind of sounds, maybe these updates can be installed, and binaries in the memory can be updated without needing a reboot.
What?
Yeah. So I think that there is obviously going to be some patches that need reboots, things like that. It's not getting rid of everything. But from a security patching side of things, it does it, whilst the machine is on with no downtime. And actually applies the updates as well. It's not just they're applied and requires a reboot later to then actually be active. So this has come out. It is only for Windows Server 2022 and 2025, and it has only been enabled for Azure machines only, and it depended on which image you used previously. So beforehand, there was actually a SKU that was like the 2022 Data Center Azure Edition Hotpatch and Hotpatch Small Disk, and originally they were the only two that could do it at that time when it first sort of came out. That's now changed to, in effect, I'll just read these out, but 2022 Data Center Azure Edition Core, Azure Edition Core, Small Disk. I said the Hotpatch ones, and now it's included in 2025 and basically in effect the same thing. Azure Edition, small disk, core, and small disk. So they're now enabled for that. So now in Azure you can apply these hot patches without needing the reboot. I think it kind of entailed that maybe it's every 3 months maybe you could get away with now for a reboot, outside of normal reboot requirements from other software, things like that, in general rebooting, but not a requirement maybe for Windows updates. So that was pretty cool. I think that's going to make it makes it really easy to at least get those security updates out there quite quickly without disrupting services, things like that. But what was announced from what I remember at Ignite was that it now allows you to use Azure Arc for Windows Server 2025 Data Center and Standard to do hot patching on premise, which I think is key.
So you think Microsoft is so hybrid and multi-cloud focused now? Like, I know some tech you can only do in Azure, but I kind of feel like they're just like, meh, you want to keep it somewhere else? We'll still give you the functionality to do it if you want to do it, and then we'll license it to you. You don't have to. Not all roads lead to Azure if you don't want them to,
Yeah, on-premise, hybrid, multi-cloud kind of feel. Yeah, definitely. I think you're right. I think stuff comes out in Azure first because first party they manage the underlying infrastructure and things like that, so it's easy for them to push stuff out. But yeah, you're right. It's almost like the second phase is always, oh, by the way, we can do it using Azure Arc, on the for your on-prem and multi-cloud sort of environments.
Yeah, it's like, cool, you can leave them there, but we'll still have solutions for you that you can license.
Yeah, and what also came out of Ignite around Hotpatch was that also, I think the next version or the latest version, at least Insider, you can do hot patching with Windows 11 on on-prem. Well, would be on-prem, but normal end users, which I think is amazing.
Oh, well, that's a great quality of life improvement, isn't it? As an end user myself, I can totally get behind hot patching, that's for sure.
Yeah, so I think that is on the Insider builds at the moment. I've not seen it on my work laptop yet, but I probably need to do a next version. But yeah, that's going to be, I think, interesting on that side. Maybe not requiring to do a reboot for 3 months. I mean, it probably takes 3 months for admins to try and get users to reboot.
Yeah, exactly.
Try everything, just to make them, but it's so difficult.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I like it. Really good. Really good.
But yeah, so like I said, it is Windows updates patches. It's not a part of current. So according to Microsoft documentation, the following types of patching aren't included in patches currently aren't included in hot patching, which makes it quite interesting. They're going to try and do more sort of other updates. So non-security updates for Windows, .NET updates, and non-Windows updates, such as drivers, firmware updates, and so on. Which that kind of makes sense that you're not going to be able to patch the firmware and maybe drivers, but firmware without a reboot. So, or maybe on a Surface you could, because they own the OS or the hardware. Who knows?
Yeah, so it's going to be used for security vulnerabilities and patches, isn't it? For core Windows, essentially.
Yeah, and I don't know how often those hot patches come out, to be fair, because that could be weekly, and you wouldn't even know, would you? From that point, because you wouldn't care.
Yeah. No, you wouldn't care, would you?
Could be daily in some form if it really needs to be.
Yeah, but how quick do you want your hot patch to be?
Hourly.
I don't know. Well, I'd just like to remind everybody of the CrowdStrike outage that we have had more recently. Sorry, don't go on CrowdStrike, but we and insert any other EDR name that could have caused the same issue, just to be politically correct. But, do you want your endpoints patched immediately with hot patches? Play devil's advocate? Dunno. I don't feel like as an organization that I need them immediately. Do we? Don't know. That's probably something to be debated, I suppose.
Yeah.
But again, whatever your stance is on that, and it could be a non-issue, but whatever your stance is on that, it's cool technology, isn't it? It is just cool that it is possible to now do that.
I mean, some people might say that other operating systems can already do this.
That is true. Yes, that is true.
But
yep.
Yes, for Windows, it's big.
Yeah, I agree. But I don't think for me it makes a difference if other operating systems can do it. I think we should celebrate any improvement, right? Because
yeah, absolutely.
You can't throw stones and glass houses, can you?
No,
because
no, it's great. It's definitely great.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm sure there might be a few listeners that think, Linux. I think Linux can do it anyway, sort of thing. So
I was thinking that I was going to make a comment, but I thought actually, you know what, it's not worth it. I don't want to be that guy. But whatever, even if it is slightly delayed and should have maybe come years ago, anything that can help, administrators administer more easily is a tick in my book. The fact that they're moving towards it, they're adopting it, because I assume the engineering behind that is a lot bigger than we could ever imagine or comprehend, right? So
yeah, it's probably the way that the operating system has been previously engineered, things like that. It's just thinking about how you modulate a lot of it more now, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't want this to be a Linux versus Windows server debate, but I don't think you can criticize Microsoft for their backwards compatibility of their kernel. They drag forward a lot of technical, I'll call it technical debt of backwards compatibility, and they should be commended for that, I think. It doesn't matter which side of the fence you sit on, you can still be appreciative of, the engineering that goes on, of the systems that we use day to day, because it doesn't matter what's more popular, but, these technologies power, massive enterprise and, the world, so to speak, so no, it's a really good addition.
Yeah, so that's really a thing I was gonna sort of cover on this one. It's semi-short episode, I say that, but I think it's just a bit to sort of bring up, because I think we've kind of talked about some of the other areas within Azure from the services side of things, but this is more of a maintenance tool, I suppose.
Yeah,
management tool that's within Azure. So, and it is security related in some form, because patching is unfortunately something that everyone has to do. So.
Nice. What episode are we having next week, Ellen? Sorry, unless there's anything else you want to cover on it.
No, there's nothing else. Next week's episode is going to be our yearly finale. So the last episode of this year, episode 40. Well, what was this one? I can't remember.
I think this was
42.
It'll be 42.
Yes, it'll be 42.
Yeah. Does that mean we've done 42 episodes? We will have done 42 episodes this year.
Yep.
10 weeks off, Alan. That's not good enough, right? That's mental. That's amazing.
Yeah, we started doing 3 a week, though, didn't we? So
3 a week. Oh, 3 a month, you mean? Sorry.
3 a month. Sorry, 3 a week.
Yeah. Please. Alan, you're a taskmaster. No, so yeah, season finale. We take a break over the holiday season to recharge. So yeah, we'll do a recap next week of maybe our favorite episodes, favorite tech from 2024 that we've seen, some of our predictions and maybe plans for 2025. So yeah, it's no tech, just sort of us rambling for, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes. But yeah, we'd like to do a recap and sort of just reflect on each season as we go.
Yeah, I look forward to that one actually, because we've done a lot this year, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. So, did you enjoy this episode? If so, please do consider leaving us a review on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. This really helps us to reach more people like yourselves. If you have any specific feedback or suggestions, we have a link in our show notes, or you can put a comment on one of the episodes on YouTube.
Yeah, and if you've made it this far, thanks ever so much for listening, and we'll catch you next week.
Yep, thanks all.